Salmon populations in the Pacific Northwest have been on a steady decline for the last 200 years as humans have tried to step in and play God over the wildlife, the fish, and even the forest that we call home. The salmon who call the west coast of North America home are one of the leading contributors to the breathtaking beauty that we see here, as well as the diverse ecosystems that we're surrounded by. The Pacific Northwest has been my home my entire life. Traveling all over the world, it's hard to find another region that is as beautiful and nutrient enriched as this one. Salmon are the lifeblood of the Pacific Northwest and the west coast of North America. We must protect them to protect our home. In order to save our home, we must save animals like salmon from further depletion. My goal is to persuade you to form your own opinion and to hopefully stand up and fight for a change. The entire life cycle of a salmon is crucial to the development and further growth of our ecosystems here in the Pacific Northwest. Salmon help bring nutrients from our vast oceans back inland, upstream, and into our forests. Salmon are one of the main food sources that sustain the biodiversity in the Pacific Northwest, whether that be the land mammals, birds, marine mammals, or even the forests themselves. Salmon are anadromous, meaning they start their life here in the freshwater, they migrate out to the open ocean, and then they come back to the freshwater to spawn and die. The entire life cycle of a salmon is spent traveling our waters, eating and spreading nutrients, or being food themselves for other predators. Chinook salmon are the primary food source for the endangered southern resident killer whales who call our waters home. According to research by the Environmental Protection Agency, there has been a 60% reduction in Chinook salmon numbers who passed through the Salish Sea since 1984. This graph showing the Chinook numbers at just under 1.2 million up here in 1984 and an overall 60% decline through the year 2018. And that small chart up there in the corner shows that the numbers are leveling out in the last 20 years, but there still really isn't any increase. This data coincides with the decline in the killer whale community, which was 100 in 1984, and today sits at only 73 whales, according to to Pacific Wild, who is an organization who is fighting for the well-being of the salmon. It is easy to go about your life and turn a blind eye to some of the issues that we're creating for ourselves. They don't always happen directly in front of us, so sometimes they're really easy to miss, but that's where some of our biggest problems come from. I urge you to open your eyes to the things happening in our ecosystems because of the choices humans make. The signs seem to be blaring once you start to notice them. Human beings have a terrible track record of forcing their hand in natural cycles that don't need our help. Dams used for hydropower are one of the biggest disruptions to the life cycle of the salmon. One example, as stated by the Northwest Power and Conservation Council, is the demise of the Snake River coho, which are now extinct. These fish had to battle 4 massive dams to return to their breeding grounds every year, and it was an uphill battle that they ended up losing. Hatcheries, which are touted as the holy grail in saving salmon, are instead paving them a road to their extinction. According to a documentary made by Patagonia, hatchery fish are one of the leading contributors to declining wild salmon numbers. Not only do hatchery fish mature to be much smaller in size, which means they're a smaller food source for other animals, they also compete with wild salmon for their habitat and food. Humans have yet to be around long enough to see the implications of our actions that will cause a vital player in our ecosystem to go extinct. Our entire ecosystem that we call home depends on salmon being alive and well. If salmon go extinct, life in the Pacific Northwest will look very different. The killer whales will be the first animal bystander that will be lost. But what will other animals, such as wolves, do, whose diet consists of up to 50% salmon? Or what about the coastal bears in our region that get anywhere from 33 to 94% of their protein each year from salmon? The forest we see every day will the forest we see every day and get to call home will also suffer greatly. Salmon spend most of their life in the ocean getting big. At the end of their life, they travel back upstream and into those forests. If they are eaten by predators, their remains will be spread everywhere that predator travels. If the salmon complete their life cycle and spawn, they will immediately die and begin decomposing. Either predators or scavengers will find them and eat them, or smaller fish and insects can begin to eat them as well. Salmon DNA can be found in our trees and forests all over the Pacific Northwest region. A very small sample of information on this topic has been laid out in front of you. It is now up to you to make a choice on how you want to use that information and implement it into your daily lives. The salmon species who call the Pacific Northwest home are one of the biggest sources of food and nutrients to the Pacific Northwest region of the world. Learning about the salmon of our region directed me to quit fishing altogether in hopes of making just a small impact in the salmon populations. I challenge you to do the same. Put your fishing pole down and help make others aware of the importance of the salmon to our home. As human beings, we have a duty to take care of the lands we call home and to leave them better than we found them, so that generations after us can enjoy them just the same way that we did. In this case, we can begin by doing our part in helping to replenish the wild salmon populations of the Pacific Northwest in our home in any way we can.